Brady, welcome back. It's been a month. We have a lot to cover today.
We do lots of awesome changes in the Hedera ecosystem and obviously in particular in DeFi.
Yeah, absolutely. So give us the inside track here on DeFi and Hedera.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So let's jump into DeFi TVL, which includes liquid staking. Hedera sitting at, in a US dollar value terms, 197.36 million. Looking at that on DeFi Llama and aggregate across all DeFi protocols on Hedera, there's definitely a dip here with regards to dollar denominated values. Again, and I think we've talked about this in the past sessions. HBAR flight price and the price of tokens fluctuates in US dollar terms. And we've definitely seen a bit of a downturn just in the midst of the cycle. And so I think that's pretty natural. Overall, in HBAR denominated terms, things are looking still up and to the right. And even in US dollar terms, from the looks of it, we're still in a good area, but we are experiencing a little bit of a dip right now.
Yeah, I remember when we were sub $40 million. So the fact that we're up around 200 isn't bad. And like you said, this is mostly because the token's changing in value, not because people are pulling out of the Hedera DeFi ecosystem.
Exactly. Monthly DEX volume is still looking pretty strong. So $310.46 million in monthly DEX volume. And when we do this figure, it's always the full month prior to whichever month that we're in, that we're doing this DeFi ecosystem update on.
Sure.
We're back at sort of the same that we were looking at in November on the rise, maybe even just slightly below that. But again, similar to TVL, it's still strong. It's still obviously within this cycle that we're experiencing. And so hopefully that continues. The other thing too is I know, there's a ton of development work that's happening right now with regards to decentralized exchanges on the Hedera network. So obviously SaucerSwap is such a huge player on Hedera with regards to sort of its prominence. It's a fork of Uniswap v3. It has concentrated liquidity. There's Ichi auto pools built into it. They have a ton of features, but there's new decentralized exchanges that are coming online. They're going to support robust features and a lot of things that you see on other networks, and then new and innovative functionalities for a decentralized exchange, some of them that maybe don't exist on other networks. And one of those companies or projects rather, is Orbit, which has been in development and is starting to launch their NFT sale. And they do things like limit orders with regards to like on-chain limit orders and order books with regards to decentralized exchanges. And so, excited to see some of that functionality go live. And I think things like that and those types of innovations are definitely going to help drive greater adoption and more volume to the network.
Brady, this is alpha to me. I actually didn't know that we were getting a new DEX. We love all the DEXs that are already operating between H Suite and, of course, SaucerSwap, HeliSwap, but I didn't know about this, and I kind of pride myself on knowing this stuff first. So we appreciate you bringing some alpha today.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think for Orbit in particular, just to make super clear, that's going to be an aggregator, is my
Okay,
understanding. So,
understood.
but what it does is it layers these functionalities on top that allow for new features. So limit orders being one of those functionalities. Next up, we've got stablecoins. Lots of exciting news that we'll get to in ecosystem updates with regards to stablecoins. It hasn't yet been reflected in the TVL and the liquidity that we're about to look at here. But stablecoin TVL, so total value locked of stablecoins sitting in decentralized protocols in DeFi on Hedera, is sitting at about 5.42 million. In this chart here, we've got both SaucerSwap's TVL of USDC and Bonzo Finance's TVL of USDC. We did see a bit of a dip in TVL on the USDC side for SaucerSwap, which I think is pretty common, as you experience these dips. For Bonzo TVL, I think given the fact that there's single asset pools with no impermanent loss, folks see that as a sort of safe haven for assets, almost more like a savings account, given the fact that there's no impermanent loss. And so
Sure.
haven't seen the dip like that for USDC and Bonzo, so it's staying pretty consistent. The biggest thing is we do have great accessibility now of Hedera native USDC. We'll get to discussing that later, but Binance and crypto.com allow for the trading of these assets. And so would hope to see maybe there's a bit of a delay and then really start to see things crank up with that level of accessibility that's now made available.
Brady, well, as you said, we'll get to it, but I really can't think of too many things that are going to impact the entire Hedera ecosystem to the extent of getting these on ramps.
Absolutely. Yeah. Huge win. And then just overall stablecoin liquidity. And again, in Hedera native USDC, that's the asset that I think the ecosystem has really been focused on in terms of a stablecoin to really look to as the go-to, is sitting at about 33.61 million. Not too much of a change here. It's kind of been pretty consistent since November or so. We did have that spike that we've talked to in some of the past DeFi corners that it's still anomalous. I'm not exactly sure what happened with that spike there, but yeah, still sitting pretty consistent at 33.61.
Something's cooking in there.
Yeah. All right, and then staking. So liquid and native staking. So Hedera's sort of go-to liquid staking platform is Stater Labs with the HBAR X asset that's sitting at about 5.64% APR or APY. And then native staking on Hedera is 0.061%. And that is, obviously native staking. It stakes the account to various nodes, and then any HBAR that's in that account that earns this reward automatically.
One of the grumblings, Brady, that I heard about was the potential of, concerns around sanctioned entities getting a hold of HBAR and then getting some of those proceeds. And there were some concerns around that. And I think, it's almost possible where you could KYC the accounts and then only the ones that KYC get, an increased native staking reward, something along those lines. And I think you could, eliminate all kinds of ways that native staking rewards could go to bad areas in that case. So I'm not sure if that's the case, if that's what there are some concerns around out there, but I think that's one of the ways you could probably solve for it.
I haven't heard that rumor, but it 100% makes sense in terms of just ensuring that certain entities don't receive that based on sanctions. I mean, it's something that if you're any DeFi protocol in the space or a network in the space, especially with regulations starting to become more prominent, and especially in the United States, trying to figure out a way to make that work where you're not giving assets away to sanctioned individuals. So KYC is not a bad idea. And then, I mean, there are KYC flags on accounts. And so, that's a unique differentiator for Hedera. And I haven't really seen that being used widely. And it's definitely one of those features that's something that, I could see being very useful in the future as regulation starts to come online. But maybe that's a great way to incorporate that aspect of it into receiving these native staking rewards and being able to boost them would be cool.
Brady, before we get into the rest of the news here, while we're talking about that kind of stuff, we've had some really good developments when it comes to Uniswap. Of course, the administration that has come in are much more friendly to the crypto space. How's the overall feeling and morale in the DeFi space for Hedera and beyond because of some of these changes? And it seems like it's opening up, and these things that we were questionable about in years past, it seems like those things are going to be allowed.
Yeah, I mean, the latest news with regards to that was there was a bill that was sort of in process around having to report transactions and individuals within DeFi in the United States. So if you're operating a DeFi protocol and you had users that were US based, by 2027, the bill was proposing that folks were going to have to, DeFi protocols were going to have to track those transactions and report them just like a centralized exchange. Just recently, I think in the last few weeks, that was shot down with the latest administration. And so that's no longer gonna be a thing by 2027. So there's definitely lots of changes in the regulation space. I think a lot of this stuff still has to be figured out. The question in my mind is like, where's the like entry and exit point that is going to require, from a regulatory perspective, some sort of identity verification or transaction tracking? And I don't really know where that's going to be. Is it going to fall on the wallet providers? Is it going to fall on the protocols? I think or maybe it's just the centralized exchanges. Maybe it's like, if you want to come over the wall, that's where you do it. And then you get in and you can play around, and it's completely permissionless. And, it's up to you to do your tracking. And then when you decide to go back over the wall, that's when it becomes obviously heavily tracked and reported, and they know who you are. And I have no idea where this is going to end up heading. And I think you could speculate on so many different configurations for that. I do like the latter, though, a bit more. I think that's more aligned actually with sort of what we've experienced today. So we'll see. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm just pretty much happy that it seems like all these things that we had questions about are going to be, allowed to proceed. Now, of course, there are going to be some controls, but like you said, the rules that were going to be put in place just weren't going to be possible to follow. And I think that was the intention, was to kill DeFi. And I don't think that makes any sense, because DeFi is the proof of concept for future traditional finance. We're finding out the things that are possible, how robust it is, how to make it more robust and more safe. So when these things do shift from DeFi exchanges to traditional exchanges, it's much safer.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And then, the one thing that I really want to see that I don't think we've, as an industry, solved yet, at least widely, is like decentralized identity, and not just decentralized identity, but also zero knowledge proofs to be able to allow people to protect their information, but still verify that they're maybe not a sanctioned individual, or, they have various credentials that are part of that. Maybe it's their age, where they have to be above 18, but they don't want to disclose what their exact age is. Zero knowledge proofs with decentralized identity are things that could help support that. And yeah, haven't seen that really be figured out yet, but I know there's a lot of people working on it.
Absolutely. All right. So what else is going on in the world of Hedera DeFi?
Yeah, so ecosystem updates. So Bonzo Finance, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bonzo Finance Labs that contributes to Bonzo Finance. It's a decentralized lending protocol that's based on Aave, which is one of the largest, most prominent lending protocols in the Web3 space. We've been operating on Hedera since November with supplying and borrowing assets. And we had our season 1 of points that started back when we launched. Season 1 ended at the end of September. And there are now claims that are going to be made available on Monday, March 17th. So if you've been supplying assets or borrowing assets and earning points during this season, you're going to be able to claim Bonzo governance tokens as part of earning those points. And then in conjunction with these season 1 points claims, we're also launching single-sided staking with X Bonzo. So you can, similarly to Hashpack, SaucerSwap, Stater Labs, with their liquid staking token, you'll be able to stake Bonzo and earn an APY through this X Bonzo token that you hold. In addition, and again, we'll get to the USDC updates, but we're going to start running a USDC native campaign to try and help drive support for greater USDC within the Bonzo Finance protocol. And anytime USDC is added to that pool, it immediately gets borrowed. And so there's super high demand. I mean, to the point that the APYs that are native to the protocol are always consistently very high, within the ranges of 8% all the way up to, for weeks at a time, 60% APYs just for supplying. So we want to try and sort of support boosting and motivating folks to bring more USDC into the ecosystem. So in the next couple of weeks, definitely be on the lookout for various campaigns that we're going to be running with regards to USDC liquidity incentives. And then as of right now, it's around 17% in total between the native APY and the liquidity incentives APY for supplying USDC.
Good stuff. I know I did lend and borrow during that first season, so I'm looking forward to getting some of those tokens. We also have some information here around SaucerSwap, our premier DEX on Hedera. Some pretty big news, actually.
Yeah, SaucerSwap, they've partnered with Coinbase, and there was even sort of a post by Coinbase about this, highlighting SaucerSwap and the Hedera network of integrating a on-ramp to be able to get HBAR to be able to use in SaucerSwap or throughout the rest of the ecosystem. So huge kudos to SaucerSwap for that partnership and all the promotion on that front. I think tighter integrations with Coinbase and more partnerships like that are a positive thing for the whole ecosystem. And then they also, along this theme of AI being more integrated into DeFi, added the Pluno AI integration. So when you go to SaucerSwap's website, down on the bottom right, there's a button that you can press, and you can ask an AI questions, troubleshooting about specific functionalities, how to do certain things. So I thought that was really cool. It's so nice to be able to integrate that type of functionality to support users, and AI has just gotten so good that from a support perspective, it feels almost like you're talking to a real person who's really well informed and trained, any of the functionalities that exist in like a system or a platform.
Good stuff. I'm thinking SaucerSwap might be one of those first HTS tokens to get listed on these exchanges, besides, of course, USDC. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about.
They're definitely in the right position for that, for sure. I think of a lot of the assets between their liquidity and trading volume, and just the overall awareness. I think they're within the top 50 on decentralized exchanges across the entirety of Web3. So would love to see that. It'd be nice.
All right, so now let's get into USDC. I think this is one of, like I said, it's one of the biggest things to hit our ecosystem in a long time. Maybe people aren't fully understanding why this is important for Hedera, but why don't you give us your take?
Yeah, so I think for a long time in the Hedera ecosystem, the ability for individuals that are participating and even some institutions being able to get access to Hedera native USDC historically has been quite difficult. And for many reasons, there wasn't centralized exchange support. The on and off ramps had high fees to get access to Hedera native USDC, and it was very limited in terms of the amounts that you could actually acquire. Circles, CC, TP didn't have the integration, so for cross chain functionality, and bridges were still waiting to come online. So there's a number of like gaps that existed to be able to make this asset really accessible to users. Just recently, Crypto.com and Binance both have supported the Hedera native USDC asset for supplying and withdrawing and trading. And so now users can go to both of those platforms and get access to Hedera native USDC. And it just opens the door to so much in the ecosystem, and in particular for DeFi. So one of the biggest sort of, I think, really quick wins under the new HBAR Foundation, or soon to be Hedera Foundation leadership, that I think was amazing. It was great.
No question about that. I mean, when you think about the businesses that are using USDC, actually, let me go back a little bit. First, we've been wondering what the killer app is going to be for crypto, for these layer one type cryptos like Ethereum, like Solana, like Hedera. What is the killer app going to be? And I think it's becoming clear that the first one is actually going to be stablecoins themselves. I mean, the amount of volume that's going back and forth with stablecoins, cross border and otherwise, is absolutely enormous, more than we're seeing on Visa or MasterCard. It's kind of mind blowing when you think about it in those terms. And those businesses need a way to get on and off. There were, for most of these other platforms, ways for businesses to go back to the US dollars because, of course, they have to pay their bills, they have to buy inventory or do whatever else they have to do. And Hedera has probably the most powerful stablecoin there is because of the underlying network and what it can do. But we didn't have those on and off ramps. So, somebody that might be using Nomad, we've seen that where you can just tap your phone and make payments from our mad scientist Milan. They can make all those payments all day long. And of course, you're saving the credit card fee, which could be upwards of 3%. But if you can't get it back easily into US dollars, it's difficult for a business to use. And if you have to go to SaucerSwap, get that USDC into HBAR and take that HBAR to a centralized exchange and exchange it for dollars, you're probably getting upwards close to that 3% anyway. But now with the fees and how cheap they are, and I think we pretty much covered the entire world when we talk about Binance and Crypto.com. I looked at the chart of how much the fees were. It's free to create USDC on Hedera on these platforms, or at least on Crypto.com, and I'm pretty sure it's similar on Binance. But then to take that USDC and go back to US dollars or back to fiat, it only costs or less than a penny. It's kind of mind-blowing. So you do get all of that savings over the traditional rails, over the credit cards. It really is huge.
100%. And I think you're right in focusing on, I spoke about the retail users and even some institutional users playing in DeFi and how this benefits them, but you're spot on with regards to businesses. There's even instances where, as a labs organization for us, taking payment or making payment in USDC, and not being able to use Hedera native USDC as part of that was really frustrating, because we want to support the ecosystem as much as possible and use Hedera native assets. And so this does open up the door to being able to facilitate that as a business. And then, like you said too, for payments, I think that's the killer use case, at least right now. There's a bunch of pieces that are coming into place from a regulatory perspective. I think stablecoins are probably going to be one of the first things that really start to get legitimate legislation, at least in the United States. And we've seen that already in the UK. And ensuring that Hedera is set up properly to be able to support that as the killer use case is amazing. And I know also, like, there's some carbon credit platforms on Hedera that use Guardian. And in talking with them, one of the big unlocks for them is stablecoin support. People need to be able to use US dollars to purchase these credits in an on-chain environment. And so you need a stablecoin. And I think this is going to heavily help support that that sort of sector within the ecosystem as well. So lots of great business cases that this unlocks for sure.
No question about that, and of course, it's a huge help for all the degens out there that want to onboard and off and get out of the Hedera ecosystem back to cash if they have any profits. But let's now jump into one of my favorite topics, of course, karate combat. We have a competition right now going on with Top Flight Football. So if anybody is into the UK Premier League, that's going on right now. But there's some other things, and I've talked a fair amount about it already on my show. But I wanted to get your take on Karate Tokenomics 2.0.
Yeah, I think the new sort of tokenomics thinking that they've employed is amazing. So with regards to an advertising or sponsorship perspective, from watching the videos that you've posted and discussions about that for the Hedera ecosystem, sponsors would purchase karate tokens and be able to use that to pay for their sponsorship, which helps support some of the inflationary tokenomics that we've seen historically on karate. So sponsors purchasing karate and then using that to pay, I think is an amazing sort of addition to everything else that they've built out so far. And then Bonk Stadium as well. So they're building a home base, a home stadium in Florida, which thinking about it from like a business perspective, and was talking to some of the team on it, it just reduces costs as well. Is the first thing that came to my mind in terms of hosting these events, and then the ability to host these events on just an even greater cadence. I know they've been tying these events to crypto conferences, and every conference is in a different place, and they find a venue, and there's permits and other things that are part of setting that up, and they're always so high quality in terms of the production. And I think having a home base is just going to boost not only the production quality, but again, from a business perspective, probably lower their costs, allow them to do more. And then, also if you see other leagues coming online in terms of the up-only ecosystem, it'd be interesting to see if, some of those events, if they can be hosted in this stadium as well. And it sort of just becomes this like physical powerhouse for the karate platform. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this.
Well, I think the Craig Jones Invitational is going to be one that's certainly going to probably take place at the stadium. And the exciting thing for HBAR or people that are into the karate token is some of those top up-only gaming players are probably going to have a space in there. I don't think it's going to be a box or anything like that, but maybe it will be. But they are planning on having a section for the up-only gamers, so it should be a blast to watch. The next thing you want to touch on is a little bit from the wins that we're seeing coming out of the HBAR Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to like crypto.com and Binance, I know for the longest time within the ecosystem, there's a lot of people asking for this Hedera native USDC support. It was I'd argue it was one of like the top, 5 things that I think the ecosystem was really wanting to see. And with the change in some of the leadership and the new mission and the vision for HBAR Foundation and, soon to be Hedera Foundation, I think they really took that feedback and acted on it really quickly. And I love seeing that. And so just wanted to give kudos to HBAR Foundation. And, I feel this is probably the first of many quick wins that we're going to start to see. But, it was great to see the type of movement and decisive decision making around, boosting the ecosystem. So yeah, big kudos.
Yeah, I share your sentiment on that. And finally, what were your thoughts around HederaCon?
I loved HederaCon. I thought that was one of the best events. The whole team that hosted that event and created it did such an amazing job over at the Hashgraph org. Like Lena and Allison were heavily involved. There's a new CMO, Sarah, that's over at Hashgraph, and everyone just did such a great job. I think there was a production team that they worked with that I'd previously done Solana Breakpoint and NearCon, and so they were obviously heavily involved in the production of HederaCon. It was great that it overlapped with ETH Denver because I think there's so many people that were in attendance of ETH Denver, not just from the Hedera ecosystem, but also other ecosystems, which allowed for new faces to come to this HederaCon event and really get introduced. I met so many people that were, obviously from Hedera and its ecosystem, but also folks that were joining from outside ecosystems. And the speaker lineup was amazing too. It wasn't just an echo chamber of Hedera related folks. We had Charles Hodkinson from Cardano. You had folks from Chainlink. You had people from the Wallet Connect or Reowned team that were speaking there. Swift came and spoke as well. There's such a huge list of speakers that were speaking at that event. It really became more of a Web3 thought leadership event more than just this is only strictly Hedera. And I think that's the right approach. And so, kudos to Hedera and for the HederaCon 2025, and excited for the subsequent years. I guess this is something that's going to keep going every year. So excited to see what that looks like.
Well, I think we have plenty of people in the Hedera space that should be thought leaders. We have Lehman doing things like DREC, and we have so many sharp teams and so forth in the space. We really should be thought leaders in the space, and I think this is a great place to start to highlight that. Brady, that's pretty much all the time we have for today, but we appreciate you coming on and telling us everything about what's going on in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Brandon.